Holy God, as we have now spent time in worship and praise, we ask that you be with us as we now think and talk and learn and listen. Open our hearts and our minds to you as we find ways to nurture and build and create community in this holy place. And all of this we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Well, good morning. So, since you were in church, I thought about this when I was adding Greg Boyle to my sermon. I thought, well, by the time we get down here, there may be not a whole lot left to be said, but there is. So I'm glad that you all were here. I wanted us to spend some time as we're continuing to have conversation for a couple more weeks about community and about building community and how it is that we can continue to build on our sense of community here at St. Peter's. And what I think is, again, the importance of that community as we work to draw those who've been part of our community before here back in, and also make our community more open and available to those who are looking for a place, looking for a spiritual home, looking for community. So these last 2 weeks, last week and today, I wanted to provide some examples of what I think are pretty, in some ways, unique communities that have been established and that have been that have made an impact in differing ways. And this is one of them. Have any of you heard of Homeboy Industries or been exposed to it before? Okay, Tim. I first learned about Homeboy Industries, and you all may know this, and if you do, then just bear with me. But Homeboy is what gang members refer to each other as. He's my homeboy, and so that's where this came from. But Homeboy Industries, I was first exposed to it a few years ago, and some of the work that I was doing at the time that I also referenced this morning in a child and family welfare ministry. And we learned about Father Greg, and we'll hear a little bit more about that, but one component of his work in ministry has been the creation of a social justice entrepreneurial component to Homeboy Ministries. So again, as I said, as I've been saying all along, for those of you who've been part of these, even though there are, people that come through Homeboy Industries have had, or obviously have had substance issues or have substance issues in many cases. They have various issues and problems that could be dealt with in other settings, in other places where community is created. AA, NA, just kind of run through the list. But what has happened over the last 30 years at Homeboy Industries, I think holds up an example, again, of the power of community, especially in helping to alter and change the lives of people who, as you may know, when those who become part of a gang, research and studies show that they're looking for something. They're looking for a sense of belonging. They're looking for something that they didn't have most often in their own family situation. They're looking for community. And that's what drives them there. It's not necessarily the violence or the drugs or what, but it's that they belong. You're my homie, Brig. I didn't have a homie until I had Brig. Brig and I are homies now, and so that's what pulls them together. So what Greg Boyle has done is to create this community of love and acceptance and of embrace, which again connects perfectly with the gospel for today. And I'm sometimes I'm pretty good, but I didn't plan it this way. I didn't know I was going to be preaching on the prodigal son when I put together the schedule for this. But this Tattoos on the Heart, I think, is his first book, and I read it a few years ago, and I was hoping that I could find it, but here's the cover of it, and you can see the subtitle is "The Power of Boundless Compassion." It's a really fine book, and I just commend it to you. It's an easy read. I think I read it on a couple of flights, in paperback form. But as you can see, Father Greg has, and also as I mentioned in my sermon, has been recognized and received a number of awards for the work that he's done in Los Angeles. And he's now written at least one other book, and the most recent one was in 2017. And he often refers to this radical kinship this kinship of compassion that helps bring people together in community. As I also mentioned upstairs a while ago, Greg Boyle is a Jesuit priest who was, I think this was his first assignment in this particular mission, this particular church in an area ironically called Boyle Heights, that at the time was the poorest neighborhood in Los Angeles. So when you think about, a city the size of Los Angeles, that's pretty rough. And then also had the highest concentration of gang activity. And so what he, after literally, seeing what was happening, seeing how many lives were being impacted and lost, and being out on the streets, literally being out on the streets in that neighborhood, then that's where he got the idea to form this ministry called Homeboy Industries. And as you can see, what he continuously is saying is that even the worst among us, even those that we want to demonize or label as being evil or horrible, and in many cases these people have done bad things, but everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a second chance. And so, as you heard in the story that I mentioned that he tells about this woman named Lisa, part of what he's come to be able to see is that it's not just about Elisa, but it's about all of us, and that all of us, are the love and the grace and the mercy and hope of God is available to all of us. And it's when as he says, it's when we can see that in the other that then this comes to fruition. Very few pictures of Greg Boyle in a clerical collar. He spends most of his time, even when, and you're going to see some video of him, but even when he's out talking, which he often does, he's most often dressed just like this. And he's also been a little bit controversial in the Roman Catholic Church. He's pushed some buttons with some of the things that he has done and said, which most often seems to be the case with people like this who who have this very passionate social justice orientation. All right, Jacqueline, I want to show you a few things, and this is just a little bit of we'll just watch a little bit of this overview, and this is also, you'll see some of him.
We're 30 years in existence here at Homeboy Industries.
We had the largest concentration of gang activity anywhere in the world. There are 120,000 gang members in LA County, 1,100 gangs. And now we're the largest gang intervention rehab reentry program on the planet. So 15,000 folks a year walk through our doors.
We always represented an exit ramp off this violent freeway. So it's an illusion that, by locking up more people, that it's going to do safety. And whatever benefit there is in that dwarfs, in comparison, it has this foreverness about a cycle of damage to kids and to relationships and to marriages and to communities.
I've been to every single prison in California. I've been from Pelican Basic Prison, Corcoran. I've been to all the higher levels, and then I work my way down to the lower levels. And there's nothing there that helps your ability.
What if we were to invest in people rather than just try to futilely, mindlessly incarcerate our way out of this problem?
It's an invitation to infuse hope.
So you can see that kind of forms the foundation for his approach to this. What if we tried to create community instead of isolating people by incarcerating them? It's pretty incredible to think about 15,000 people who come through that particular ministry on a regular basis. And in some of his other talks and writings, this is a nonstop ministry. His ministry doesn't just end with this, but it's also in being a priest and a pastor to these people. He talks about You know, I think it's close to 300. It may actually have exceeded that now. 300 of these people like this that he's buried. And so I mean, it's not all. It's not, unfortunately, it's not all success stories. And he's become to be seen as the priest and pastor to this wider community of even those who are still involved in some ways in gang activity. So as you can see, and as you heard a little bit of what he has said, the focus of Homeboy Industries is to provide not just a haven or not just a place to get beyond addiction or whatever, but it's to provide training and support and hope to be able to help them to redirect their lives, and as we saw a minute ago, to have that second chance. And over these last 30 years, not only has it become the largest of its kind in the world, but it has also become a blueprint for other organizations who are now trying to do this same type of thing. So it has a global impact. Now this, what I found was a little bit is even increased since that, and actually I think that came from from some of their information. But again, you can see that what he continuously holds up is being welcomed and accepted into a community of kinship. He uses that word a lot. And I think that's what I want to hold up for us this morning, is to say that whether you're a homie and who's been running with gangs, or whether you're us, that being welcomed into a community and knowing that you have that kinship and that fellowship and that sense of belonging and love is so critically important. And I think, again, as I've said many times over the last several weeks, part of what I think we missed, and I've heard many of you say this over the last 2 years, when you couldn't have that community, was that sense of belonging and of being able to be with each other. So initially, Father Greg was just helping the homies find jobs out in the community. And then they developed a bakery. And now there are almost a dozen social enterprises, which not only obviously generate revenue for the ministry, but they also provide work for the gang members, and also a place to help them train and be able to, again, redirect their lives and move on. But all of this is done in this umbrella of Homeboy Industries that is a community. So here's some of what they are involved with: job training, employment and reentry. I don't know how much you know about tattoo removal, but that is one. I had an opportunity to meet someone several years ago that actually we tried to pull into our organization to do this work, because he was doing it in Chicago. It was the first time I'd really learned much about how significant that is. But if you've seen some of these pictures, and you'll see some of them, you can see the tattoo on the back of that young man's head. But tattoos, when you're part of a gang, a tattoo says a lot. And if I have a certain tattoo and I go into another neighborhood, that's probably going to cost me my life. And so a lot of these tattoos, not only is the significance behind them, but the fact that they have chosen to put the tattoos all over their bodies is obviously somewhat of an inhibitor to them being able to move on and to gain maybe the type of employment that they want. So tattoo removal is a vital part of their ministry. Substance abuse, education services, legal services for obvious reasons, parenting classes, anger management, just a wide array of things that are offered in addition to helping them to have employment and trying to, again, redirect them to keep them off the streets. Let's hear number 2.
Privilege of my life. For 30 years I've worked with gang members, and they've taught me everything of value. The day won't ever come when I have more courage, or I am more noble, or I am closer to God. And the thousands of men and women who have walked through our doors at Homeboy Industries in the last 27 years. People like Lewis, he kind of runs the place along with a handful of other gang members. He's been to prison. That too was a heroin addict for a long time. Now he runs the place. He's become something of a public speaker in his own right. So we went to dinner the other night and he was giving me tips on how to speak publicly. He said, you know, you have to pepper your talk with self-defecating humor. I said, yeah, no shit. So brace yourselves. The truth is, we do have to brace ourselves if we want to have integrity in following Jesus. We want to stand and go where he goes. Of course, the secret of the ministry of Jesus was that God was at the center of it. And we want to imitate the kind of God we believe in, a God who loves us without measure and without regret, a God who is just too plain busy loving us to have any time left to be disappointed in us. I'm in 20 different detention facilities where I say Mass as a priest, and California, especially Southern California, LA County has a lot of those places. And so I was at Mass one day in a huge gym, about 300 mainly gang members, and I was sitting there listening to the word being proclaimed by these gang members, and I had the liturgical sheet on my lap, and I thought, I'm going to listen, I'm not going to follow along. And a homie got up, he was reading something from a psalm, I think, and he had sort of an overabundance of confidence, and he said, the Lord is exhausted. I said, what the hell? And so I look at the sheet, and it says, the Lord is exalted. And I thought, wow, that's way better.
So I think that gives you a little bit of an idea and flavor of how he is, of his approach to his ministry, and just and I think after working with a population like he's worked with for all those years, he really does have some great stories, and so there's a whole lot of them out there on YouTube. So I just commend them to you, and in all, obviously in every one of his talks he tells a story. One of the better stories that he tells is about taking two homies to, I think it was to Washington, D.C. Actually, I think it was to the White House. He was being recognized for something, and he took these two homeboys with him who had never left Los Angeles, had never flown on an airplane, and his description of that, and one of them was just tatted up all over, and his description of how the stares and the looks that they got as he's walking through the airport with this young man, and then describing a conversation that he had with a flight attendant on the plane who. He got to go to the restroom, and it was quite a while before he came back, and he comes back, and Father Greg says, well, where have you been? He says, well, I've been back there talking to this flight attendant, and as it turns out, she had engaged him in conversation, and he said, something to the effect of, she just really listened to me. And Greg says he looked at her and said, yeah, because she saw you for who you really are. So anyway, some great and powerful stories. Even as he points out over and over and over again, and he mentioned in that talk, about the embrace of God and the loving God who invites all of us who are sinners into that embrace, is that even somebody who's been involved in a gang for maybe most of their lives, that there's instilling in them this idea that there is something else, that helping them to imagine a future that doesn't include that type of life. And again, here is just another comment that he makes where he includes that word kinship. I love this about our secret sauce is the fostering of a community of tenderness and kinship. Our secret sauce. Fostering a community of tenderness and kinship. Now, again, here's this priest surrounded by, former gang members, all who are, in their various, outfits and tattoos. Yeah, but to me, this is really what we ought to be about in the church. is fostering a community of tenderness and kinship. If everybody who walked in the doors of St. Peter felt like, wow, when they left, they said, God, it was just a community like that. I mean, how powerful would that be? So you try to create a community of kinship such that God might recognize it, and you try to announce this message that nobody is outside the circle of compassion. So you may have heard a few minutes ago in my sermon, I mentioned that he, talks about this circle, bringing everybody in, that nobody is outside this community that where there is acceptance. And as also mentioned, his favorite parables are the ones about those who are lost, and then things that have been restored. And that's the whole focus. So fostering community sanctuary, and remember earlier I said that in many cases this is what's been lacking in the lives of these people, is a sense of family. And that's what provides them with the ability to be able to come into this community and feel that hospitality and that welcome. We belong to each other. Every single person is unshakably good. So there's no need to sever belonging. No need to say you're in, you're out. One day you might be in, but you need to change your behavior. Unacceptable, unconditional love. Who does that sound like? Yeah. I mean, it's not. You don't have to have a theology degree to get that. I mean, that's really what it's all about. And he's just articulating that, but not only articulating, but living it out and holding up the community that he's created to say that that every person is unshakably good. Now, we've been having some interesting conversations in our Lenten book study about this, and how do you look at somebody like a Vladimir Putin as being unshakably good? Well, read this. A lethal absence of hope. So in community, you're creating hope, you're transforming lives, you're inviting everyone in, fostering that sense of kinship. We imagine a world without prisons, and then we try to create that world. I love this phrase of connective tissue, that even after all of the things he's seen, and remember I mentioned a moment ago, I think it's getting up to close to 300 funerals and gang members that he's buried now, that he has not lost his belief in the connective tissue of tenderness and the importance of creating a community of belonging. And that's pretty powerful if you think about it. Because I don't know what the success rate is. I don't know if how many of that 15,000 that he talks about coming through the doors, I don't know if it's 50, 75, 35, I don't know. But it's got to be fairly significant or it still wouldn't be around. But I also know and have heard him talk about how with the extreme violence that he's seen and experienced, the young children that he's seen who've lost their lives on the streets there, but in spite of it all, there's still this idea. We refuse to settle for a behaving community and instead choose to form a beloved community. We know that our hope resides in communal living, communal thriving, and aliveness. I also really like this image of the front porch. We're called to fashion a world in which we are the front porch of the house of everyone who wants to live in. Again, wouldn't that be a heck of a model if people said, man, that church feels just like the front porch. It would just go sit down on it and I'm welcomed into it. All right, let's hear that last one, Jacqueline.
This place stands for a high degree of reverence for how complex human beings are. That indeed everybody is a whole lot more than the worst things they've ever done. And so we want to see people as God does, with the highest, deepest reverence for that complexity. To see each other today and always for the truth of who we are. That we're God's delight. And there's nothing you can do to alter that.
Your thoughts, reactions?
You know, I don't know a lot about this, but I know that it's happening in some lawyers in the Invoke know. And I'm not sure what his title is, but his first name is Wesley. He's an attorney in the city. Does anybody know who I'm talking about?
No.
He's an elected official, so he's elected.
Uh-huh.
He's the, isn't he the new, is it district attorney for the county? Wesley Bell?
Wesley Bell is who it is. He has started a program like this.
Oh, really?
Yes. I don't, and he has, I would think I was told 90% proven positivity.
Uh-huh.
It would be interesting to,
It would be. Thank you, Francis. I wasn't aware of that. Maybe it's one of these, that has come out with the 400 organizations that's, come out of and been influenced by Homeboy. I don't know. That'd be interesting to know.
I don't think it's well known that he has done this.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I'll thank you. I'd like to know more about that.
You may have
Bob?
said, when did Father Boyle begin his ministry?
He started 1980. I think 1986 is when he went to that that parish in that neighborhood, and then a couple of years later, in '88, is when he actually started Homeboy.
Just a point of irrelevant information, I've had experience in that neighborhood.
Oh, have you?
I was in graduate school at USC. I went out for lunch one day. Why I didn't stay on campus, I don't know. I just drove back to the neighborhood. I just went to Schnucks, like, to get a snack.
Yeah.
And boy, I'm telling you, they were in community. They didn't enjoy an outside view.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it was back then, as I mentioned, the impetus behind him putting this together was what he was seeing and experiencing, and it hadn't gotten any better. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's an organization
Dick?
in St. Louis, it's a fathers group
Uh-huh.
that have been in jail, and it's a fathers group who be with their kids, because so many of them in the inner city don't really have a father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yes, same type of connective tissue there, with that sense of I need to belong. I need to belong to something. And that's when, if you don't have that foundation, then you're going to look for it. Tim?
I worked for several years in a North St. Louis home for delinquent kids, and our executive director was a little nutty, but very good guy, well trained. But he would say to the kids, instead of saying, "If you run away, you're gone," right? He said, "I won't let you out of here until you stop running away." And that worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very prevalent here. I had a friend this week that was attacked in the city by a gang member.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's.
They really do bad things.
They do. They really do. They do. They do. They really do bad things. Yeah, that's right. Trafficking, drugs, violence. I mean, it just goes on and on. Yeah. I mean, it is a significant issue.
There was a rolling gun battle on I-70 two nights ago between Ladue and Delmar.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it was right down Ladue and 170.
Oh, really? That was gang related, or probably so. Yeah.
Yeah, we got stuck in that traffic.
Uh-huh.
Me too.
Yeah.
Coming home at the same time, weaving through the countryside. trying to
Yeah.
get home.
Huh.
I'm afraid we don't hear a lot. I think there's a lot more that goes on than we know.
There's a decided change in news media. They're not broadcasting names and details of evildoers in order that they don't get the publicity that probably they're trying to find. So a lot of that, they just scotch the whole news altogether. It's not correct, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that as we look at things like this, which tend to be, this is, I'm not saying this is mainstream work in ministry. This is extreme. This is radical. This is radical in many ways. But what I hope is that as we look at and think about, these types, ways in which community has been created and the power and the impact that it has had, that can inform our community. As we think more about who we are and who we, more importantly, who we think God may be calling us to be. So, 30 minutes. Thank you all. Thank you for being part of this. God bless you.